Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Phillies Daily on the Fan Arch Podcast Network. I am your host, Chris Moore. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like and subscribe wherever you may be watching and however you may be listening. Also, make sure you go like the Phillies Daily Facebook page as well. Phillies win their fourth in a row. They sweep the Minnesota Twins and now open up with a win here in this three-game set against the Marlins. A little bit of luck along the way, but hey, you'll take it. We'll get into it all. The Phillies win 6-5. But first thing I wanted to start with, Dave Dombrowski, I think, owes Bryce Harper big time. Bryce has, was upset, but didn't make a massive deal out of the comments from Dombrowski a couple of off seasons ago, and now has shown a complete selflessness that you could only hope for out of your superstar players, out of your captains, out of your leaders. Bryce Harper has done it, and I talked about it before the trade deadline and then shortly after the trade deadline. And now Bryce is not only talking about it and moving positions, but he's also doing it on the field with the way that his at bats have gone. His on base percentage is north of 500 since Luis Arraez arrived in Philadelphia, which tells me that Bryce knows exactly what kind of weapon they have behind him. And if he can do this, then the rest of the team can follow suit as well. At least the guys hitting with him in front of Luis Arraez, and give Arraez as many opportunities to drive in runs as possible. If you give Luis Arraez his, RBI chances in 8 out of his 10 at bats, he's going to get a hit in probably at least 2 of those 8 opportunities that you give him. You figure he gets a hit just north of 3 out of every 10 at bats. So figure 2 of those 3 hits are going to come in the 8 opportunities you give him with runners on base. And Harper, again, getting on base at a 500 clip right now, hitting in front of Luis Arraez. He's, I don't want to say altered his approach. If he has, it's been slight. It hasn't been a ton, but just his execution, his focus, and knowing that it's not all on him and he can take walks, he can get base hits, because, there is a hitter behind him that can drive him in, can kind of keep the baton moving, and keep this team in positions to win games. And offensively, they've really been solid since this trade deadline. Outside of a couple misses here and there, especially in that Cardinal series, they went kind of cold. But outside of that, they have hit the ball well. They've scored runs, and they did so last night. They put up 6, just enough. The bullpen kind of faltered a little bit late. But ultimately, the Phillies get it done. And then not only is Bryce Harper doing it offensively with his approach, but again, it's, you have to imagine he's in the training room every day. He's getting that knee worked on and looked at every single day, just battling through it. And, again, Bryce Harper's never going to be a plus right fielder anyway at this point of his career. So if he's got a little, hitch in his get up, again, he's going to be a negative in right field anyway. He's not stealing bases anyway. So as long as he can be out there and playing and it doesn't affect his at bats, then you take it and you live with it. And that's exactly what the Phillies have done. And Bryce Harper's done everything he could to be the best version of himself at this age that he can be. And it has benefited this team in a massive way. And so again, Dave Dombrowski was right. Bryce Harper's not a guy that you can really look at and say that's the best player on our team and we're going to win the World Series because of it. Bryce Harper's not that guy anymore. Not for a full 162 game season and through the playoffs and everything. Like he's not that guy anymore. He's not going to compete for an MVP. He's not going to lead the league in home runs anymore. Like, it's just not the player that Bryce Harper is. He's obviously, as we mentioned, not stealing bases like he used to. So he's not that guy. But he has shown that as he's aged and as certain skills have deteriorated, the skills that aren't, he can refine, he can replenish, he can continue to improve on them and be a player that contributes to winning baseball and be a key player on a World Series winning team. And obviously that's what the Phillies are hoping that they can get out of him and the rest of this team this year. But Bryce Harper is absolutely leading the way, and I think Dave Dombrowski owes a hat shake to Bryce Harper. Again, he wasn't wrong for what he said. He may have been wrong for saying it. Wasn't something that necessarily needed to be said out loud, especially to the media. But Bryce Harper has shown that he can still be an important player on a winning team. and be a leader on a winning team as well. And it's exactly what this Phillies team needs. And again, with the arrival of Luis Ariz, and now he's starting to hit again. I believe it's a 5-game hit streak now for Ariz. If Harper's leading the charge and getting on base in front of him, and Turner continues to swing the bat well, and Schwarber's kind of been hit or miss, but now behind Ariz, Alec Bohm seems to have, gotten on one of his hot streaks. And again, I expect the hot streak of Alec Bohm to deteriorate. I don't expect it to last, but boy, while he's hot, it can be really good. He got another hit and drove in another run last night. But again, this all centers around Bryce Harper's selflessness, his willingness to do things that other superstar players, other captains, other leaders of teams may not have been willing to do, all across the league. And Bryce Harper has done it, and he's been great at it. And it's been truly, a difference maker for where this team is at. Last night's win, again, a 6-5 win, not without controversy. The Phillies certainly catch a break there. The umpire missing the clock. I believe that was the 7th inning. Yeah, it was the 7th inning. Johnny Bolin on the mound, and Johnny's been really good for the Phillies here for the last 3 months or so. Probably been their most reliable reliever outside of Joan Durant. But Bolin didn't have his best stuff last night, had an opportunity to get out of it, and ends up giving up what should have been a 3-run double down the line, ultimately ends up a 2-run double down the line. The Phillies catch a break. And I think the umpires, listen, it stunk for the Marlins and it was great for the Phillies. You just can't give that runner the extra base. That doesn't happen, right? Ground rule doubles, even if the runner from first was going to score, they hold him at third. It's just the way it is. Now I get this isn't a ground rule double, right? This is an umpire whiffing a call. Ultimately, I heard, I believe it was last night, they were talking and they said, umpires don't like the challenges. It's not a part of the game. Umpires, Major League Baseball umpires are the grumpiest, most miserable officials in any league. NFL referees will stand there and say, hey, do we like being challenged? No, but we want to get the calls right. We want the calls to be right. NBA referees, I haven't heard the NBA. Challenges are new in the NBA. Challenges are fairly new in the NHL. I haven't heard any of those refs whining and complaining that teams now can challenge what they do. Part of the game is not allowing umpires to just completely whiff and get calls wrong, and the players have to live with it. Hitting is hard enough, man. Pitchers now are throwing 98-mile-an-hour fastballs and 91-mile-an-hour sliders and changeups that look just like fastballs at 88 miles an hour. Sweepers and curveballs. Hitting is hard enough. You throw in, umpires calling pitches strikes 4 inches outside the strike zone. I'm sorry, that's not a part of the game. And umpires completely whiffing on a clear fair ball down the first base line should not be part of the game either. You should be challenged because you're not perfect. But ultimately, as long as we have human umpires, and listen, I'm not saying get rid of umpires. I just think the umpires need to understand that they're not perfect. And, we watch sports because we want to see, 2 teams or 2 athletes, depending on what sport you're watching, but ultimately we want to see 2 competitors go against each other and see who's better, and not have a third, an outside third party have a massive influence on the outcome. And unfortunately, a third party did have a massive outcome in the game last night, because that's definitely a 4-4 game if that, if the right call is made down the right field line, especially. And I don't think Derek Hill or, Justin Crawford or whoever may be playing right field, in that scenario, but especially not Bryce Harper, is getting that ball soon enough and getting it into the infield to hold up that runner at third. But again, because of the way it went, because the call was wrong, because they had to overturn it, that runner holds at third. That's just the way it is. You advance as many bases as everybody else does, especially the hitter. And that's just what it is. And the Phillies may have won this game anyway. If it's 4-4, right, we can all, the Marlins can pretend, well, if it's 4-4, then this happens and we win, right? But, you could go just the other way and the Phillies could end up still winning it, in regulation, 9 innings or in extra innings. But certainly the umpires whiffed on that one and the Phillies benefited from it. But you need things like that. When you're fighting for a playoff spot and trying to get in, and then when you get in, even still, You need things like that to happen. It's better to be lucky than good sometimes. I firmly believe the Dodgers lose the World Series last year if Isaiah Kiner Falefa, who was running at third base, had a little bit of baseball instinct and took off when he should have. He doesn't get thrown out at home, and the Blue Jays win. The Dodgers catch a break. IKF hesitates. They get him out. Will Smith hits the home run later to win the game. So you have to catch breaks sometimes, whether it's the other team having a mental cramp or whether it's an umpire whiffing and making a wrong call. You have to get those breaks, and the Phillies need every break that they can get right now. And now a game up on the San Diego Padres for that second wild card spot, or the Philadelphia Phillies. Christopher Sanchez, he's been good, hasn't been great, and I don't know. Like, is maybe this is who Christopher Sanchez is? And again, like, you can't complain about a guy giving you 6 innings, giving up 1 run. I'm not, by no means am I complaining about it. But again, like, he hasn't been that dominant guy that we saw, earlier this season. Well, he's just not, and I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if a couple days off, skipping a start or pushing one back is the way to go. I don't know. Or keep sending him out there every fifth day and let him work through it. But again, like, you're going to look 6 innings, 1 run. Hey, great. But there were 8 hits. There was a point where 3 straight innings, he let the leadoff runner get on base. They had runners in scoring position multiple times. Like, it was not, it could have easily been a much shorter start for Christopher Sanchez. The Marlins ran into some outs with their base running. And the Phillies infield defense was really good, for the questions and concerns about how the infield defense was going to look, after the moves. The infield defense has been better. I mean, quite frankly, I think across the board, the infield defense has been better. And I mean, what I should say is in totality, they've been better. Like I said, they're probably worse at second base, but still a net positive. And Alec Boehm has been fine at first base. And Bryce Harper, not a great first baseman anyway. So you're replacing not a great first baseman with not a great first baseman, but you're still plus at second base. You improved greatly at third base, and Trey Turner's been better at shortstop. So I think in totality, this infield defense has been better, and it benefited Christopher Sanchez in a big way last night. If Alec Boehm is at third and Trey Turner's still struggling at shortstop, Christopher Sanchez's outing may be a lot shorter last night. So again, and it's against the Marlins. So, it worries you when we play teams like, they got 7 games in 10 days against the Braves coming up. They're going to play the Brewers again. They're going to play the Rays to end the regular season. Like, when you play these teams that are in a different class than the Marlins are, it's he's going to need to be better than he's been. And again, he hasn't been bad. He hasn't been as good as we saw earlier in the year. And I think he needs to be that guy if the Phillies are going to go on this run that they're hoping to go on. Last but not least, Derek Hill, just again, where there were questions about how Dave Dombrowski did at the trade deadline. There were some things that he could have done better. He could not have done a better job in stealing Derek Hill away from the White Sox. He has been truly the perfect guy in the role that he's been put in. He's not a star player, but the role that he is in and filling right now, he is doing a phenomenal job. Pinch hitting off the bench, playing great defense, running the base as well, clutch hits, clutch at-bats. Last night, 2 RBIs, as a pinch hitter off the bench, and 2 separate at-bats to drive in runs, 1 with a base hit, 1 with a walk. He's been exceptional. He's been a winning player that I don't think the Phillies saw coming in the way that he has done it. He has been phenomenal. Hats off to Dave Dombrowski for finding him. Hats off to the Phillies for squeezing the most out of him that they possibly can. And hats off to him for being what he's been as a player. Seems like he's been a good fit in the clubhouse as well. Just wanted to touch on how much of a benefit it has been to have Derek Hill a part of this Phillies team. And again, you have to give credit to Dave Dombrowski for going and finding him, bringing him here, and the coaches for like I said, getting the most out of him, and him being just the player and person that he's been in this clubhouse. He's been excellent. And if the Phillies do find themselves in the postseason and he performs like this, we as Philadelphia faithful will fall even more in love with Derek Hill and the player that he's been. So Phillies go again tonight at Zach Wheeler on the bump, trying to go for 5 in a row Here are the Philadelphia Phillies. This was Phillies Daily on the Fan Arch Podcast Network. I'm your host, Chris Moore. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.